Great, and then we'll switch to slide view, please. Great. Greetings, everybody. This is a panel on bots, and we'll be talking about chat bots, not the kind of bots that are ruining democracy. Hopefully these kind of bots will help save democracy. And I thought we could each introduce ourselves really quickly, and then we'll jump into kind of a short presentation on some of the bots we've each been working on, and then we can open it up for discussion. My name's Andrew Haeg. I've founded a platform called GroundSource, which, among other things, enables news organizations to build bots. And what I think of bots as are automated two-way conversations that appear to be coming from a human being, but are actually coming from an automated script that present information in a way that's engaging and allows people to kind of automate that conversation, gather feedback, and inform and shape their journalism. Before this, I was in public broadcasting for a long time in the States and co-founded a platform called the Public Insight Network.
Hi, I'm Jacqui Maher. I work at Condé Nast International, which is the sister company to Condé Nast in the US. We publish several magazine titles across 11 markets internationally, plus the US, including Vogue and Wired and Vanity Fair. Prior to joining Condé Nast, I was at the BBC and the New York Times. I've dabbled throughout my career in journalism in a variety of what could be described as chatbots or messaging bots or social media publishing bots.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eduardo Suarez. I come from Spain. I am one of the co-founders of Politibot. Politibot is a bot that we created for the Spanish election last year, and now is about reporting on elections and global politics on Telegram and on Facebook Messenger. And very soon, we hope that it will be a platform to build bots in an easy way. And before that, I was working at El Mundo, El Español, Univision, other places.
Great. So I think the first question is why bots and why now? I think one of the big reasons is the ability to personalize your news stream to your tastes and to your needs. Really, forever we've created stories that people receive, and they're largely undifferentiated, and everyone receives the same story. But if you have a different level of expertise or a different level of curiosity about the story, you don't really have a way of customizing that story to your own needs. So I think that's one reason. I think also localization is another reason. Some of the bots we've created allow you to get a very localized version of data or a story. Also convenience. Everyone has on their phones the ability to text message, and increasingly other chat apps are becoming as ubiquitous. So whether it's Messenger or Telegram or different parts of the world, Line or WeChat or Viber, increasingly we're experiencing the world in a chat-based interface. So meeting people where they're at in terms of the technology they have, but also their expectations that they can engage with your news organization in the same way that they're engaging with their friends in a conversation. So news is a conversation that's simple and convenient without having to download a new app necessarily. And also in our case, but I think Eduardo is going to talk about that, maybe Jacqui as well, the kind of conversation that you can have with a bot is oddly and surprisingly and strangely human. People chat back with bots in a very human way, and they chat with them often like they're chatting with other humans. In fact, the very first bot that was ever created, called Eliza, which kind of acted like a therapist, so it would ask you questions like, how do you feel? How does that make you feel? And tell me more. Even the creators of that bot would chat with it for hours because it felt somehow cathartic. So there's something interesting going on with the chatbots. We don't quite know what it is, but people chat with them like they're other human beings. And that allows you the opportunity, affords you the opportunity to get really authentic feedback. And again, meeting people where they're at in terms of their experience and their curiosity, and being able to chat back and forth with them like they're a human being, which they are. One of the bots we've just created in the last couple weeks, or helped create, is with the Texas Tribune in Austin, Texas. And they're really on the front lines, the vanguard of everything community and engagement. So it's been really a great learning experience to work with them to build Page, which is kind of a clever take on the idea of a capital page, which is someone who gets information at the legislature and passes it off. But in this case, it's the concierge or the guide to the legislative session for people who are not necessarily very engaged in politics, but are very curious about it, who aren't going to watch every legislative session as it unfolds, but want to be informed about it in a way that suits their needs and their interests. So if they're interested in education, they don't want to know about all 400 bills that are being discussed at the legislature this session, which is how many bills are being discussed. They want to know about the education bills, or even the education bills that they're specifically interested in. So I was in on the development from an early phase with Texas Tribune, and this speaks to kind of how to develop bots, and I think we'll talk about this later on, the process in a newsroom for creating a bot. But they actually created a persona first, and I think when you're setting out to create a bot, you really need to understand who it's for and what information needs those people have. So spending that time on the front to do actual research to understand who is this bot for, and that will inform everything from the voice of it to the information that it's going to convey to the kinds of questions you can ask, and then also the marketing and the discovery of the bot. And we'll talk about that later too. So they went through a very rigorous process. They did actual research and surveys using a mix of Mechanical Turk and other things to kind of build composite pictures of who they were serving with it. And then they came up with this persona of a young man named Billy, who was relatively curious, followed the news, but didn't really want to get too nerdy with politics, but still wanted to stay in touch with what was happening at the legislature. So a really good, vivid picture of who they were serving with Page. Then as they created Page, they've promoted it using a mix of links and buttons on their webpage. They have a challenge. So if you accomplish a certain number of tasks that the bot will give to you, you will get a chance to win 5 tickets, I think up to 5 tickets to one of their events. They do a big event series. So they've been thoughtful and creative about how they're promoting the bot, how they're incentivizing people to discover it and to say hello to it. And then once you do say hello to it, you get different paths you can take. So in this case, it's just, do you want to sign up or not? And on our platform, on the back end, on GroundSource, you can build a script for this, give people different branches to go down, so you can kind of create that interactive experience. This is what their story scripting looks like in Google Sheets. So they're doing their initial story scripting or bot scripting in Google Sheets. It's just an easier place for them to kind of visualize it. And then as they get it straight and as they get it sorted out, then they bring it into GroundSource and then kind of build it into an actual script. But you can see here that they have 3 different, in this case, this is their Monday. So this is another thing to think about, is what rhythm do you want the bot to be engaging your community at? Like, when do you want push notifications to go out? In this case, they're doing a Monday and a Friday kind of edition, if you want to think about it like that. So people will get a push notification on Monday with a look ahead to what's being discussed at the legislature that week. And this is what the script looks like. So they have 3 different stories that you can dive into at varying levels of depth. And then you'll see in the fourth or whatever column that is, the engage column, there's nothing in it now, but there will be call-outs. So are you affected by this bill? What do you think about this bill? What's your opinion about this bill? So when they get to a certain point in that journey, they're going to be actually asked for their feedback and maybe even for story ideas or for how that bill will affect them personally. And this took a while to kind of get this into shape. And if you're going to build a bot, you have to think about your newsroom's workflows and how do you patch into that bot the content you're already creating in a way that doesn't add a ton of work to everyone's plate. And so they've figured out a pretty efficient way of doing that. And I think as we get more experience doing these kinds of things, we'll be able to make it a fairly streamlined process that another newsroom could pick up and use pretty easily. But they've done a lot of hard work kind of pioneering some of these story forms. And I know Eduardo and Jacqui are doing probably similar things on their end. But once these get a little bit more templated, I think they'll be a lot more accessible to other newsrooms. So this is what it looks like to take that script and to put it into GroundSource. So you're kind of giving some skip logic. Is that the sign that I should stop talking? So this is what a script looks like in GroundSource. You give it some tags. You turn it on for Facebook Messenger. You can't really see that very well. and then you can give it a keyword, so people could message in a keyword like hello or legislature or whatever to initiate the bot. So I can get into that a little bit more later, but that's basically what it would look like in our platform as you're taking that script out of Google Sheets and actually translating it into a script that you can activate as a part of your bot. And then you can press send and activate a push notification to go out to everyone, or set a keyword that people can message in. Oops. So that's the Texas Tribune bot. It's only been live for 2 weeks, and I think they're closing in on 1,000 subscribers so far. And they're, a pretty big news organization, a digital-first news organization, but those are significant numbers. Early indications are really strong that people want to engage in this way. I think there's some question marks about, do they want the choose-your-own-adventure path through the bot, through the story? Is it better than just getting a straight RSS feed? Is this a more engaging way of getting the news? I know the Quartz app, people have asked and to some extent answered some of these questions. So there's a lot of question marks about what is the optimal form of bot engagement, and how do you parse your stories out in a way that makes them engaging? But also, I really think, and we'll get more data on this, that actually asking people to feedback at a certain point of the process makes it way more engaging, and you'll have that kind of mystery or surprise at the end of your bot experience where you'll be asked the question, and I think that will keep people coming back, but we don't know yet whether that's the case. So that's been a really strong experience. We've learned a lot, and I think we now have the capacity to help other newsrooms build similar bots. This is a totally different project, one in Detroit. It's actually designed to serve low-income Detroit residents and give them very specific information about rental properties. So 70% of homes in Detroit are not inspected, and this group, Outlier Media, again, a fairly new media organization, through various means wrangled a database of information about 390,000 parcels in Detroit, every home, every rental property in Detroit, every home and apartment, not just rental properties. And they have for each of those dwellings information about who owns it, how much they owe in taxes, whether it's in foreclosure, the risk of water being shut off, and they can serve all that information up if someone texts in the address of an apartment. So this is an SMS-based bot. We could also turn it on Facebook, and we will. So when they text in, you can see this here, you text in this an address, you get this report back on that specific property, and then you're asked some questions. So in this case, do you want to have foreclosure information? But the next question you'll get is, was this information helpful or useful? And if someone says yes, they might also tell a story, like, well, I was going to rent this apartment, we have 5 kids, but now we realize the owner owes $10,000 in back taxes, so we're not going to rent this property, but we don't know what to do next. And on the other end of this is an actual journalist reading every single response that comes into the feed, and actually, in many cases, on a one-to-one basis, helping that person solve their information need. So it says that the owner is listed as so-and-so, but it's not, what's going on here, and then she's also getting story ideas out of this. So it's a really unique and interesting model. I think it's one that should spread. And it takes that engagement paradigm of, usually you're asking people for questions or asking people for information. Well, in this case, they're giving information of value first, and then they're asking questions. And on the back of that, building investigative journalism. So you could apply this same model to environmental reporting, to any kind of reporting where you've got some data that you want to deliver to people in a very localized way and create a conversation with them. And these are the kinds of messages they get back. People are very thankful for the information that they've received. And that, at a time when media lacks a lot of trust and to some extent loyalty, these kinds of exchanges where you're delivering value individually to people have a great impact on people's perception of media and their engagement with media. There are some issues and questions, and I think we'll get to these more as the discussion goes on. But bots are they're hard to make. It's hard to make bots go viral. It's hard to experience a bot in Facebook Messenger, for instance, and share that experience with someone else. You'd have to share the link to their messenger and say message in this keyword to that bot in order to get someone else to do it. You can't get to the end of the bot and put in the names of 10 friends and they instantly get an invitation. So I know Eduardo asked the Facebook guy who runs the newsfeed or the product manager for the newsfeed today about discoverability and how to integrate that maybe with the newsfeed. So there's some question marks around discoverability. And there's this uncanny valley. So people, when people interact with a bot, they want to mess with it, you know, just like I would. And so you have to make your bot fail in clever, funny, interesting, or maybe even useful ways. So when you insult the bot, you know, be ready to have some sort of clever comeback. And we're working on that. I know Eduardo is too, in terms of kind of creating conditions under which when people text certain things back to it, like right now, if I text back the CNN bot saying, you know, why did Trump just send Tomahawk missiles at Syria? It's going to say, looks like you want to know more about Trump. And it's going to give me 3 Trump stories, and that's not a very satisfying exchange. So yeah, I think we're a long ways off from AI and being able to anticipate, like to have an actual somewhat normal conversation with someone, all based on automated kind of algorithmic conversational stuff. I mean, some bot tools are integrated with IBM Watson, but I think it's kind of more on the producers right now to come up with different paths out of the bot experience when people are texting certain things back. And I think the other thing that bridges this uncanny valley too is having human beings actually chatting back to people. So that line between the bot and actual human communication can become blurry. And I don't think that makes people uncomfortable. In fact, I think it's a fun experience to actually then be chatted back to by a human being. And then, like I was saying before, this Texas Tribune bot took a lot of work, and I'm sure the bots that we'll talk about here took a lot of work. So actually making these a day-to-day part of a newsroom's routine, which they should become part of that. Right now, it takes a lot of work, so it's a matter of making those more routine and less time-consuming, so you can kind of build them more into the flow of how you do your engagement work. So with that, we'll pass it on to Jacqui. Yeah, can we switch back to the slides, please? Oh, it's just a dongle.
Hello. So I'm going to run through a recent project that I did with British Vogue. Oh, are we going to use my computer?
No, I'll use mine.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I work at, as I said before, I work at Condé Nast International, and we publish many magazines. One of our biggest ones is Vogue, and Vogue is our biggest property outside of America, and it's either in the top 1 or 2 positions inside the US. So I'm going to talk about bots from a slightly different perspective, fashion perspective. So I started at Condé Nast on a relatively new team that my boss Wolfgang Blau started, and I'll just, if I may, I just wanted to say something about the team because it's relevant to why we even started looking at developing chatbots. The team was started to come up with a global strategy for our titles and across all of our titles, a global digital strategy. It's been fascinating for me as I've been working there to understand like the history of the company and why it works the way it does. It's made up of several independent companies that are incorporated in each country or market. And up until, I guess, maybe January, most of the head editors had never even met each other. So having not met each other, having not even spoken to each other, there was very little collaboration happening, which also meant there was very little sharing of common processes or common platforms, technology and otherwise. So my team has a mandate to fix that and fix some of the inefficiencies and help streamline some of our reporting processes and publishing processes. But what that means, as someone who was brought on to do interactives, data journalism, and innovative new formats of storytelling, it means that doing that whether in Japan, Mexico, the UK, Italy, France, would require me to actually integrate with, gosh, I think over 24 different publishing platforms. So that brings me back to bots. So I was working, I was brainstorming with the British Vogue editorial staff. Vogue, how many of you actually read Vogue? You can be honest. One person. Excellent. How many? Two. Oh, that's good. So Vogue is a fairly old title. The first issue, and that is what the first issue of Vogue looked like, a little bit different. Was published in 1892, and it cost American 10 cents. It wasn't for several decades that an actual color photograph graced the cover, and now you will never see an illustration like that probably on the cover of Vogue. So it was started in 1892. I was brought on, as I said, to do interactives. How do you bring a brand like this that's in many different markets for varying lengths of time? I know Australian Vogue was started in 1959. The first international Vogue was started in 1916, and that was because the ships that were delivering American Vogue were being stopped because there was a world war going on. How do you bring a brand like that into the digital age with all of the challenges that I already mentioned about different publishing platforms and stuff? How do you make that new and innovative, right? Well, everyone gets a CMS, as I just said, and sorry, I'm having to do this in stereo because I have my notes over here, so pardon me. Chatbots, this is unfortunately not a real bot. I wish it was. Someone has put a lot of effort into it, but into drawing it, but yeah, it's not a real bot. So I'm talking with the British Vogue staff. They're around the corner conveniently from where I work, which makes them a good first test case, right? So it's mid-January of this year, mid to late January, and the fashion weeks are about to start. For those of you who don't know, there are 4 major cities that have big fashion weeks. It starts with New York and London, Milan, and Paris. Us being the international team, New York is already covered by our American sister company. So we were talking about what could we do, to tailor perhaps our coverage. There are thousands of shows that go on in these fashion weeks. Does anyone actually follow the fashion weeks? This is all very new to me, by the way, so yeah, cool. So we were trying to come up with a way of maybe making that a little more personal for people, because frankly, well, and this was actually part of the experiment. We wanted to get a better understanding of why people go to Vogue. Are they industry insiders? Are they designers? Are they aspirational? Are they looking for inspiration, like what should I wear, or so on? So we wanted to get a better understanding, and so this was an experiment. We decided we could reach probably the most number of people if we developed something on Facebook Messenger. And I think, yeah, you can see on this screenshot of our Facebook page for British Vogue, the number of people who have liked it. It's like over 3.5 million people. So we wanted to have the most impact and reach the most people. So, as I advance, this is a screenshot of the initial interaction of what we came up with for the Messenger bot. We wanted to give people some content right up front, so they would understand, like what the bot could do. And so what happens is you start messaging British Vogue, and it will give you a curated list. It's an image carousel. I'm not going to try to load it on the internet because it probably won't load. It'll give you like the top 4 stories as curated by the British Vogue staff. But what we really wanted to let people do is understand, follow their favorite designers. So what that required us to have was a database of designers. Who else would have a database of designers but Vogue, right? That's what I thought. No, they didn't. As I already said, like over 24 different content management systems. Each market prioritizes different designers. We have a Vogue in India that doesn't care about Fendi, Chanel, and so on. So how do you make a bot that recognizes that Fendi is a designer, right? We had to come up with a way of scraping all of our sites, and some of them had APIs that we were able to leverage and pull in the names of the designers and create a database from it. So that was a bunch of initial legwork that we had to do. But once we did that, we were able to make this bot that would recognize when you say, show me Fendi, that Fendi is the name of the designer, and it would then query our site and return the latest information that we had on Fendi. Which brings me to a little point about when people talk about automated coverage or automated reporting, automated journalism, robot journalism, or chatbots, what I start thinking about are, well, how do you recognize when something is actionable? How do you know that someone is talking about a designer, in this case, Chanel? So if someone says, tell me about Chanel, or just the word Chanel, or you can imagine different ways of wording that kind of sentence. You kind of, does anyone here know what Mad Libs are? Mad Libs, yeah? It's like you fill in the blank, right? So you have a story, right, on paper, and it has blanks, right? So in this case, the blank would be the Chanel word right there. So you have to just, whether you use, I guess there are a variety of ways to go about it, whether you split it up on spaces and then you try to match that, or you do like a pattern matching. Once we had the database of designer names, we were able to match on that. Build up our database of brands, make it searchable, build an API for it. And we had to have some way of responding, right? So we made a CMS of sorts. I know another one to add to our 24. And we also needed a way of sequencing the order. So I think you touched on this a little bit. When you are, it's kind of an interesting and kind of weird way for me of thinking about having a conversation. Like, oh, well, first I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say that. And if the person says yes or no, it's like a very methodical way of structuring it. But we wanted to provide a way for our editors to change how the bot would talk. And I'm just going to skip through a couple of these. Yes. So you can't always anticipate everything someone is going to want to say to a bot. And I felt very silly about this. So this screenshot is from our admin, and the reason that those two lines are, they have like a reddish background, that was a warning sign for me that the bot was not recognizing something. So here I am, I was so excited to launch this. It was my first public-facing project. And it's supposed to be a bot that was very knowledgeable about Fashion Week. The staff of Vogue is very knowledgeable about it. And it didn't understand what London Fashion Week meant. That's a message that it received on February 17th. Right. That's a problem. And so because I was capturing that information, I was able to respond to it. So if you're building a chatbot, I would highly encourage you to build it in a way that you can actually pivot and change how the bot responds, because that's, granted that's obvious, that your fashion bot should know like when someone is saying that, but in the run-up, which was about a week, sometimes you miss things, right? So we built this relatively simple rudimentary interface, but we were able to respond to people and tell them, oh, you said London Fashion Week, this is when it is, this is what it is. However, yeah, did not anticipate marriage proposals. This is just like an initial selection of, yes, we got job applications, we got models, or supposed models, who knows, messaging the bot. you'll never know. So we were able, so those don't have a red background there because at that point we had already gotten several marriage proposals and had decided on the Vogue editorial voice response to unsolicited marriage proposals. So that was for British Vogue. We are the international team though, and despite them being around the block, we can't just work with the British staff, right? So we have Vogue in Japan, and what does a chatbot mean? Does that even make sense for Japan? Well, in Japan, it's not London, right? So what works in London doesn't necessarily translate. These are our like numbers, right, on our Facebook pages. As you can see, Japan, Facebook is not nearly as popular, right, with our audience. Yeah, that's a pretty big difference. So the big social platform in Japan is not Facebook at all. In fact, it's waning in popularity. It's Line. Online, we have close to 1 million friends, as it's called, on that platform. And we get almost half of our referral traffic is from Line. Sorry. That is what the thumbs up equivalent, as best I could make it out, as I've been discovering how Line works. Does anyone use Line here? Some people? Okay. So Vogue in Japan is already on the Line platform. The Line platform in all of its documentation and literature does not actually refer to chatbots as chatbots. They're called official accounts. We have an official account. It's not automated though. So I'm working currently with the staff on what kinds of interactions would make the most sense for that audience, right? However, this is a quote from a photographer who works very closely with the Gucci brand on their most recent collection. And I really like this quote because the title of our talk is Bots, Where Next? So where next, I could have gone down the road of talking about multi-platform bots and Line and WeChat when we get into China. But I find it a little more interesting to talk about what having a conversational sort of interface opens up the door for. As I said already, I don't have a background in fashion reporting necessarily, so I've been learning on the job. And so a lot of I have many questions about why some of the things happen that do and why we cover them in the way that we do. So here is a screenshot of our review of the recent Gucci collection, the Autumn-Winter 2017 Ready-to-Wear collection. How many people know what ready-to-wear means? Why is it even called ready-to-wear? And what are the other sorts of collections that, couture. The one that, yes, did you just say cruise? Yes, resort, which is also known as cruise. Yes, that was a new one for me. As I'm going through and ramping up on my own knowledge of this information, I started to wonder how many people who come to Vogue are already very conversant in these terms, or are there a mix of people? Are there insiders? Are there the more casual observers who just want to look at nice photos or strange photos of clothing? And so if you scroll down the page, right, this is from British Vogue again, but our different Vogue titles generally are covering the same shows. I started to read the review, and can you read that? I don't know. The handbags at Gucci had tiny copies of Jane Austen novels in them. Okay, that has not answered any of my questions yet. I only have more questions. If we want to let people, to help people understand who the highlighted term there is the creative director current of Gucci, Alessandro Michele. Who is that? Is it really staggering that 119 looks were included in this collection? Compared to what? How many looks are usually in the collection? It mentions a show invite of record, right? what is a show invite? Like, is it an actual record? The thing that follows seems to be about like A side, B side, maybe it's vinyl. Well, yeah, this is a show invite, and they're very custom for each show. Why aren't we showing it on our site, right? We have very exclusive access to these events that very few people in the world can go to, and why aren't we like providing our audience with that kind of view? Isn't that why they're coming to us in the first place? So, how do we know how much context to give people, right? Like, I don't want to, for instance, tell Anna Wintour what she should know about fashion, because she already knows. If you've seen The Devil Wears Prada, which is, that's Meryl Streep up there playing Anna Wintour, you know that she's, you know, she can be a tough person, right? And she has very high standards. And our audience is not all, they don't have the same level of understanding. So I got to thinking back to bots. What if we could just ask someone, how much do you understand? And what if we could do that in a way that we could scale it, right? Because we can't staff up enough to do that. So what we're looking at now is a way of providing context via bots. And we're playing with the idea, and I don't know if anyone has seen this article that Typeform published, but it incorporates the interaction of a bot within the article. So as you scroll through the article, it will prompt you and ask you questions as you go. So that's what we're looking at now. Thanks.
While I'm getting Eduardo's deck set up here, why don't we just take a few questions, and then we'll move on to his presentation. Go ahead.
Whatever. I would like to get back to the last topic you mentioned, how to get a sense of the degree of knowledge of the reader, because I come from the area of science journalism, and there it's a really huge problem that you have a really large diversity of readers with totally different backgrounds. The one guy doesn't even know what a gene is in the first place. You really have to explain everything to him, and the other guys way beyond, and so you never really know where to start. And so I was wondering if you could share any insights or ideas how you're going about that. Do you ask them questions like, do you want me to go deeper on this, or do you want me to explain this term, or what areas are you exploring?
Well, there are a few different approaches. Well, there are many approaches, right? And people have tried them already, in part. For us, it will vary depending on which market we're trying to provide this context for, so we haven't actually like rolled this out yet. So we were in the very early stages. But what we're looking at are ways of doing it via like quizzes, so that you can not exactly like directly asking someone like, does this make sense to you, or do you need to know more? But sort of letting someone kind of prove how much insider knowledge that they have. With science journalism, yeah, it's kind of interesting to me. Like, I've looked at this from the political kind of spectrum and science to some degree, and I think no matter which topic area you're dealing with, you can engage with the person directly, maybe, like if someone is like sending direct feedback to you with questions, you can respond that way. I guess, yeah, we'll be experimenting and like measuring as we go along, so I'm not sure.
One quick thing to add to that, I think it's a really interesting way too to figure out who has expertise in your audience, not just to serve them up.
These microphones hate
Yeah,
us.
I do not. Not just to serve them up more in-depth content according to how much they know, but also to ask them questions. So they get to a certain point in the bot, and you could say, well, it looks like you know a lot about fashion. Tell us what you do for a living, and then maybe you could have a conversation with them. So there's really interesting things you can do with that, with that kind of targeted feedback approach.
Yeah. Without emulating Clippy.
Okay, great. So I'm going to tell you quite quickly about Politibot. Politibot is a chatbot that we created last year. There was an election in Spain. It was the second election in just 6 months, so we wanted to cover it in a different way. So we created this chatbot on Telegram. We chose Telegram because Telegram was interesting in Spain. It was very heavily used by politicians, especially politicians from the new parties, the left-wing party Podemos and the center-right party Ciudadanos. They were both using Telegram, and we thought that it was a great opportunity to connect to kind of political junkies, people that are really into politics. So these are some of the numbers that we got. Politibot was up last year just 3 weeks, from June the 9th till the end of June, actually. So we generated like more than 100,000 sessions in just 3 weeks, and we have like 8,000 users. Not every user entered the bot once a day, but what was most inspiring about the experience was the time that they spent in the bot or with the bot. As you can see there, 1/3 of them stayed with the bot for 5 minutes or so because they found interesting content in there that they like, and some of them just wanted to chat with the bot. So I'm going to explain more or less what Politibot was like. I would say it had 3 parts. This was the first part, and I guess the most important one. We gave the user like a daily digest. Sometimes it was not daily, it was twice a day or 3 times a day. For example, the day that the election debate came up, but it was usually once a day, and it's like a daily newsletter. The only thing is that it's a conversation. I mean, Politibot sends you something. Today, for example, we sent something about the attack in Syria, and what just the user interacts with the bot basically through some buttons. As some of my colleagues said before, it's probably the best way to do it right now because of the artificial intelligence we have now. Well, that was one of the parts of the bot. There were 2 others. The second part was this menu that we had on Telegram, where you could access articles that were selected by humans, as we said at the time. As you can see there, well, the user can choose between a very brief text about Spanish politics, a long-form text, usually profiles of politicians or reportage, whatever. You can see charts, of course. And in this menu, they say packed, because after the election, we changed the menu, and because everybody in Spain was wondering what the government was going to be, because nobody got absolute majority of the election, and this was one of the things that were interesting. And the third part of the bot, and the most interesting maybe, was the natural language. As I told before, it's very rudimentary right now, I guess for everybody. But we kind of were prepared to answer some of the funny questions that people usually make to a bot. We had a list of greetings, which is the most elementary thing that you do to a bot. Of course, we prepare the bot to respond to some of the insults that the bot receives. This is very usual also. And also we wanted the bot to be prepared to say, well, I don't understand something or whatever. So as you can see, for example, in this example is, well, someone has told the bot, I like you. And the bot just say, well, basically the bot ignores the compliment and they say, well, I'm going to see if I have an article right there. So these kind of funny responses got a little bit viral in Spain, and people were doing screenshots and saying, well, Politibot is a really nice guy, or he's a crazy robot, or whatever. And it was good because people were really understanding. From the beginning we said, this is a very clumsy robot, this is an experiment. We try to lower expectations on that regard, and I think that's a good idea, at least right now. And people were actually connecting with the bot, and we were talking yesterday, I mean, we got lots of messages, especially from women, like saying, well, I like Politibot, I want to marry him, or things like that, as Jacqui said before. So that's kind of, well, I don't know if it's scary, but it's kind of interesting. Two other things that we did with the bot, and I think they're interesting. We did election results in real time. So instead of going to a website and, I don't know, touch like different buttons to get to your constituency and know exactly what is happening during the results, you just shared your location on Telegram, and you just got 2 screenshots, 2 charts. One of them was the result in real time in your constituency, and the other one was the result in the nation. The other thing that we did, and I think that's interesting, is to share with the readers, with the users, the kind of responses that they gave. In this case, for example, we asked them what was the party that they had voted for, and they told us. Most of them told us one of the most intimate things that they had, which was the party they had voted for. And well, as we have discussed in other venues, I mean, this could be interesting for the future, because sometimes polling firms have very difficult, have lots of difficulties to reach young people. For example, usually young people don't answer when polling companies ask them questions. So this could be an option to monetize the project maybe in the future. What you could see here is, as I told you before, the users and more or less the traction that we have. The first part of the chart is the part of the year where when the bot was active. So as you can see, we are really happy with the retention, because I mean, more or less 50% of the people who used the bot once stayed in the next few days and talking with Politibot. Well, what's next for us? We were funded by Google. DNI Fund is a fund, innovation fund by Google, financing innovative projects here in Europe for news organizations. So we're trying to replicate what we did in June, and trying to create a platform so other companies or news organizations could build bots in an easy way. Well, that's what we are trying to develop now, and we are looking for people who want to try our platform in the next few weeks. The other things that we would like to, I think Andrew said before, and Jacqui also, I think chatbots are really interesting because they can provide a personalized experience for the user, and this is one thing that we did a little bit with the results, as I said before, but we would like to try in the next few weeks. Politibot now is not just talking about the Spanish election, it's talking about global politics in Spanish, at least so far. You can see the direction where you can go to try it if you want. That's on Messenger. And this is the team that built Politibot, by the way. I'm just one of the founders. And I think one of the keys of the project is that we had 3 developers, but also we have political scientists and journalists, and I think that the fact that it's multidisciplinary, it's one of the things that make it work. As I told you, these are the places where you can find Politibot. If you can try it or you know a little bit of Spanish, it's easy to use. And well, happy to answer any question later. Thank you.
So I think we have like 6 or 7 minutes, maybe 5-ish, before we have to depart. So let's take some questions. Up here first.
Hi. I have a couple of questions. One really around the results. So you hinted a little bit about the results and engagements and stats, talking about retention and time people spend with the bot and so on. And I wondered if you have any stats like this, Jacqui. And the second question I had for you, Eduardo, on the polling aspect of it. I find it really concerning because if you talk to people that have a phone number, you might have their identity and then you have their voting preferences. So you start getting into really dangerous territories. Like, did you think of that? Did you explore that a bit?
Yeah, really quick. We don't have the phone numbers of the people. We just have the Telegram ID or the Facebook ID. And what we do is anonymize their IDs. So we basically have a platform and the platform makes sure that we don't know exactly who says what. So, I mean, we know that there are, I don't know, some of the people, I mean, we have the percentages, and we have that there is a user who says this at that time or whatever, but we don't have any knowledge of the particular opinions of every people. So, and actually, when we made the company now, and it's like a more serious project, the first thing that you encounter when you enter Politibot is like terms of use, that actually we try to write in a way that is understandable and that is kind of written by the robot and in the same voice as the robot has. And we kind of make sure that people really understand what it is and the problems that you could have or whatever. That we don't know exactly who says what, basically.
Hi, quick question for each of you. I know you all have very different bots with different objectives, really, but I'm wondering if each of you can tell me how much human resource it takes to actually curate the bots on when they're on an active basis.
I think in the case of the Texas Tribune approach, there was the initial period of planning out the bot and scripting out the week-to-week content, which took a lot of time, dozens of hours to do that. And a team, getting reporters involved. But on a week-to-week basis, it's really getting from each of the reporters the content for that week's look ahead, and then for the Friday edition as well. I would have to ask them, but I think it's probably a few hours to set up the script for that Monday, like 2-3 hours, and then some monitoring throughout the week, and the same goes for Friday. So it's gotten to a pretty sustainable level of effort. They're going to try some other things out where they're going to do specific segments, like a group of people wants to get updated about a specific bill. So there's going to be some management with that, and certainly monitoring the feed of content to see, if the bot's missing something important, to be able to chat back to people. So, throughout the course of the week, I would say probably 10 hours or so just to maintain this bot as it's active.
Yeah, and I would just add on to that that'll vary depending on why you're using a chatbot in the first place. At my previous job at the BBC, I was part of a team that created some chatbots that were really a means of circumventing censorship. So they were, in that case, sort of like RSS feeds, but they were delivering our journalism, at least, to places that couldn't get it otherwise. So if it's more of a distribution workaround or circumvention, it'll probably require less maintenance. But if you're actually trying to engage and interact with your audience or potential new audience in a new way, it'll take more time, right?
Yeah, in our case, we usually, the digest that we do, we usually do it in 1 hour, between 1 hour and 2 hours. It depends on the original content that you make for it. We usually make charts we try to make like 1, 2, 3 charts for the digest itself. And apart from that, I think there's like a maintenance work that you should do. In our case, for example, is curating interesting articles. Actually, we have created another bot, an internal bot to do that, to curate articles, to add articles to a database. And the other thing is to train the bot in the natural language. We try to do that. We try to get all the responses that we have, all the crazy things that people say to the bot, and to write responses for them. Because they are not the same, but they could be quite similar. And our system kind of recognize the similarities and kind of associate those responses. So I would say those are the tasks that you should do with the bot.
So one more question. Let's do 2 quick ones.
Hi, just one quick question for you all. How long do you think it will take till, so many chatbots work button-based, especially on the Facebook Messenger. I don't know how it is with your chatbot, for example.
Did you say button-based?
Button-based.
Okay.
So yeah. So you press buttons to enter certain messages that the bot can actually react to, because many bots fail when it comes to misspellings and all that sort of stuff. How long will do you think it will actually take till chatbots can actually chat with people?
So how long until like AI or machine learning gets us far enough?
I have not interacted with the ones that are, there's some that are experimenting with integrating with IBM's Watson, so they're getting a little bit better, but the uncanny valley is probably a big problem there at that point where you're like, this thing is not understanding what I'm trying to say. So I think it'll probably be a while. I haven't seen one that does it elegantly yet. Have you?
No, I haven't. So that's why maybe you saw one.
No, and I've interacted with all of them.
I mean, I would just say that if you want to see an example of a bot that deals with that sort of, with the uncanny valley sort of thing well, Channel 4 did a bot around its show Humans. I don't know if anyone, I actually haven't seen the show, but I have interacted with the bot. And the whole point of the bot was part of this advertising campaign that they did around the new season of the show. And the show, okay, so I haven't seen it, but I know the show is about cyborgs or robots in some way. And so the marketing campaign was, we've had a default in one version of our Android. Please contact our customer service Android. Kind of funny that they would have an Android maintaining the Androids. Okay, but the bot was supposed to be an actual robot. So if it didn't understand you, you kind of anticipated that because it's a bot, right?
I would say it's not so much as a chatbot can chat, because they can chat. I mean, they can say you things or whatever, but it's more like, when are we going to be able to build a chatbot that gives you exactly what you are looking for? And I think we are a little bit far from that. And because of we are far from that, I think right now, and probably they also think that the best option now are the buttons, because you kind of focus the reader or the user on what you can really offer. I think one of the biggest problems now with chatbots is expectations. I mean, usually when you go to a robot, you think that it's going to be like, I don't know, like a vendor or something like that, and it's not there yet.
One very quick one, and then I think we have
Last one.
that's it. That's, okay.
We could have
Oh wait, last one. Okay.
Yeah, last one.
It's a very quick one. Are you at any stage or are aware of any of the chatbots project at the stage where they measure return on investment, or still toying around?
I would bet there's a lot in the customer service realm that are doing that. None in the journalism realm that I'm aware of. But I think the retention rate, and we're starting to think more and more about funnels. So if someone texts into your bot and then 6 months later they become a subscriber or a member, how can you track that activity and what? And I think once you get to those funnel metrics, I think we're gonna have really great data on ways to guide people through a bot experience that gets them to some form of action that's got some value for your organization. So I think in the next year or two, certainly that's where we want to be, is doing the funnel kind of stuff like HubSpot does and for marketing automation, but for chatbots.
Yeah, I would say that I mean, a chatbot could be a useful service that maybe a newspaper could offer for subscribers, for example, like an added service. And it's value that you can add to your readers. And on the other hand, I mean, there are ways that you can monetize that. We talked about polls before. That could be an option, especially because response rate is really, really low for polling firms. They could, I mean, it's like 10% or something like that. And in a chatbot, it's 99%. I mean, everybody answers what you are normally asking. And the other thing I would say is that we are at the early beginning on all of this, but I think in this world that is so noisy, I mean, the fact that you have a point where you can engage with a reader on a daily basis and create a routine, I think that should be valuable. And actually, the last thing that we did with Politibot in June was ask our users if they would pay for the service. And it was like, I don't know, like 25% or so that say, yeah, I would pay for this. So I don't know if they do, but at least we say they would. I mean, hopefully.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.